Good evening. The April 17th special meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission is called to order. Would the secretary call roll for determination of a quorum?
Commissioner Colby?
Here.
Commissioner Fernandez?
Here.
Commissioner Henneman?
Here.
Vice Chair Gilliland?
Here.
Chair Parker?
Here.
Let the record reflect all commissioners are present.
Okay. Please rise, and I'd ask Commissioner Fernandez to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioners, are there any changes to the agenda? If none, we'll take a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
A second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Commissioners, please vote. Okay.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Moving on to public comments. At this time, any person may address the governing bodies on any subject pertaining to city business which does not relate to an item listed on the printed agenda. Normally, no action may be considered or taken by the governing bodies on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Madam Secretary, do we have any non-agenda public comments?
Thank you, Chair. There are no non-agenda public comments.
Okay, we'll move on to the discussion item. May we have a staff report?
You may. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, and members of the community. My name is Leah Kolick. I'm the Parks and Community Services Manager for the City of Murrieta. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to tonight's Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. I hope you're as excited as I am to be here as we gather to discuss something truly significant for our community, our Parks and Recreation Master Plan update and the unveiling of the new Trails Master Plan. Before diving in, I wanted to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you for taking time to join us tonight. Your presence is a testament to how much our community values parks, recreation, and connectivity through trails. Whether you're a commissioner, a staff member, a community partner, or one of our residents, your engagement makes all the difference. To give you a bit of context for why we're here, the original Parks and Recreation Master Plan, adopted in 1999, laid the foundation for so many of the amenities and recreational opportunities we now cherish as a community. Fast forward to today, and we see a city that has grown substantially, not just in population, but in scope of services and facilities we provide. With over 115,000 residents, 53 parks, and miles of trails now under our stewardship, we are at an exciting crossroads. These updated plans will ensure that we continue to enhance the quality of life in Murrieta for generations to come. Tonight, we are fortunate to have the exceptional team from RJM Design Group joining us. Over the past 15 months, Zach and Kristen and their team have worked hand in hand with our city staff, community stakeholders, and residents to develop these plans. Their dedication has included focus group meetings, stakeholder interviews, community workshops, surveys, and even dedicated project websites to keep everyone informed and involved. I want to take a moment to thank the RJM team for their extraordinary efforts and partnership. I also want to acknowledge the incredible work of our city project team for these master plans. Director of Community Services Brian Ambrose, Management Analyst Crystal Aurora, and City Planner Carl Steele. Thank you for your commitment and passion in serving Murrieta on this project. Now, without further ado, I'm delighted to turn things over to RJM Design Group, who will guide us through their findings and recommendations for both master plans. Through their presentations, we'll gain a deeper understanding of the community input they received and the data they've analyzed and the vision that will drive our city forward. Thank you all once again for being here. I look forward to the discussions ahead. And with that, I'll pass the torch over to Zach with RJM Design Group.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be invited back here again tonight to share with you what has been more than a year's worth of research and data collection and outreach to the community as we've gone through this journey. It has been an exciting journey, and I'm happy to share it with you tonight. I've been told I have 2.5 hours per presentation. I get excited about them because I get to share everything I've heard, everything we've seen. So I do tend to go long, but I will try to keep to the time limit. But I am going to hit the high notes as we go through this. Right off in the very beginning, the purpose of the Park and Recreation Master Plan is really to develop a implementation and management tool for you that identifies local community needs. That's the most important part. Kind of the cornerstone of this entire document is what does the community need, what do they want, and what do you have? How do we balance those scales as we go forward into the future, making sure that any penny, any dollar, anything we spend towards the community is in line with what their views of recreation are in the community, and that it's an appropriate expenditure. This is an actionable plan. It provides short-term recommendations, mid-range recommendations, and long-term recommendations and visions for the future as you develop. It takes into account the current CIP projects as well as maintenance considerations. The project was broken down into 5 stages. First, the inventory of the existing conditions, what you have. Then we went to the community, an extensive community engagement process, which I will share with you tonight. And then we look at the needs analysis. When we balance those 2 scales, we develop the recommendations. Ultimately, pair that with funding recommendations and implementation strategies at the end. You can see here the timeline of more than a year where we started at the end of 2023 on the left-hand side here, where we started the background data collection and the existing documents, looking at everything that existed. Then we went into, from January until June, all of the public outreach efforts where we met with people online, we met with people in person, we met with stakeholders. We also had, as Leah had said, a dedicated project website to where anybody could follow along with the progress of the project and provide feedback. It's still open tonight. At any point in time, people could click a feedback button on that website and share anything they wanted to with us. Starting with some of the background research, the demographics, and then we'll go through the information that we collected, ultimately leading to the community voice and the needs assessment. We look at a snapshot of the community. In 2023, the population was just about 120,000, 119,182. And we look at the population and the distribution of those age ranges. You can see there on the right-hand side. From under 19 years of age, 28%, 22%, 20 to 30. The largest portion of the population, 35 to 64, and then 65 and above, 14%. That black dashed line there represents the county average. Now, this is not the end-all be-all of the planning tools. This just gives us a snapshot of whom the community is from an age range and what we might see in terms of potential programming opportunities. Then we go through the inventory of the parks and recreation facilities. We saw 53 parks, 3 community centers, 2 recreation buildings, a couple of the images there on the right-hand side. As we go through, we looked at the distribution of those parks facilities all across the community, where they are, how people could get to them, what communities they're in, and who recreates at these park facilities. You can see here the inventory of the community centers there, with the 3 community centers and the 2 recreation buildings you see there, one on the far north end of the community, 3 centrally located, and then 1 on the left-hand side there. We also did an inventory of all the recreation programs. You can see here everything from arts and crafts, dance and performing arts, health and fitness, martial arts, STEM programs, senior programs, special events, youth, and enrichment day camps. This way, we know everything about the community, what you're doing, where the facilities are. So when we go out to the community, we have an understanding of what park they're talking about, what trail they're talking about, what program they've participated in, what they're looking for. Are there any gaps? This leads us into the extensive community engagement process where we had stakeholder interviews, statistically valid multimodal survey, 3 community workshops, a project website with that feedback comment on there that was live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is still live today, so everybody can follow along. And here's just a snapshot of how many people we heard from. We had almost 4,000 touch points throughout this process from all of our outreach efforts. You can see there on the right-hand side. I get asked a question a lot, Zachary, is this a good amount? Are these the correct numbers? I can tell you over the last 10 years, the last 12 to 15 park and recreation master plans, yes, these are good numbers. These are in line with what we see when we go out to communities. How many people come to the workshops, how many people participate in the online surveys. This is a good element that we see. And further, as we go along, I'll show you the maps of where the data comes in. That's actually more important to me is, am I getting a good distribution of community participation, or is it just all on one corner of the community? I want to make sure I'm hearing from everybody across the entire community. So these are very good numbers. We did hear from a large portion of the population from both qualitative and quantitative measures. Now I'd like to share with you some of those things I've heard. As we went through, one of the elements we did was stakeholder interviews. We asked several different questions. 2 of the highlighted questions here right now are the program needs and the park facility needs. When we went through them, I asked, what does you feel a program is needed to be added or expanded here within the community? Things that we heard from our stakeholders were community events, cultural programs, historical events, partnerships with local schools, pickleball classes, promotional events, events that classes offered, as well as swimming classes. The park facilities question I asked, what facilities do you think we need here? I heard elements such as more parks, bike trails, community centers, equestrian centers, improved cleanliness, modernization of parks, pickleball courts, pump track, restroom maintenance, soccer fields, sports fields, and a swimming pool. As we began our community-wide outreach effort, here are the maps I was talking about just a minute ago. Each one of these maps represents where we heard community feedback from. The multimodal, statistically valid survey is the first one there, all across the community. Workshop 1, 2, and 3, participants from all across the community at those workshops. Even the feedback, which is just the online portion, we record all of those elements. We do that so that way when we look at if there's a desired need, I look at where that need came from. And then we tie it to what park is in that area. Then we look at that facility. So these needs are not just based on what is the citywide need. No, what is this just strategic need over here in this community? What is this subset looking for? What can we help them with? So that way we're putting dollars specifically where they need to be. As we go through this, some of the questions that we talked about, what we heard from the statistically valid multimodal portion of the outreach, we found that 44% of the participants get their information about parks and recreation facilities from the city's website. That's important. As we go along, we want to make sure if we offer something, how do we best get out to that community? How do we best reach to the most people throughout the community? Every community is different. You happen to have a high percentage. The average percentage, across again, the last 10 years, is around 37%. You're higher than the average, so a lot of tech-savvy people. 76% of the participants were satisfied with maintenance of the recreation facilities here in Murrieta, and 78% are satisfied with the existing parks and recreation facilities here. And then we have 62% visit a park or open space in Murrieta at least monthly. The average for that one is 33%. You're double. You have a highly active outdoor community. That's important. That's really important to note because now the use goes up too. And that's what we'll see as we go forward with this. Also, we asked the same questions of the participants in the statistically valid multimodal survey. What program needs are there and what park facility needs are there? We heard elements such as teens or kids activities, senior activities and classes, swimming classes, improving communication, pickleball classes, fitness classes. A lot of these are going to start to sound repetitive. They're not duplications, they're common threads. As we go through this process, we start to look for those common threads, and here at the end of the report, I can see all of them woven together to create the tapestry, which will be the recommendations at the end of the report. So as we move through, you'll hear a lot of these things repeated. The park and facility needs, elements that we heard as common threads were improved playgrounds, improved parks in general, dog parks, restroom maintenance, splash pad water park, pickleball courts, walking, hiking trails, sports field improvements, the bike trails, landscape improvements, safety improvements, as well as cleanliness of parks are some of those common threads. When we had workshop number 2, I skipped two of them, sorry about that. Workshop number 1, we asked 3 questions. What are the most important community characteristics? What are the issues or trends that may be negatively impacting the community? And what role can the city play in addressing those needs? As we went through that night, we asked the individuals, and we asked them as groups, and then we presented the information back in each one of those workshops in that same format. And here's some of the summary items that we heard. Safety and security, some of those amazing community characteristics that make Murrieta a great place to live, work, and play. Community engagement at the events, the recreational spaces, the outdoor activities, educational excellence and resources, the family-friendly environment, things that might negatively impact those, traffic, and urban planning elements of the streets and the roads and confluence of safety and vehicular and pedestrian elements that we'd heard, homelessness, social issues, park maintenance and upgrades, recreation facilities and space, not having enough, community engagement and engagement of activities, not having enough. They could all impact those elements. What role can the city play in addressing those? Of making sure that as we go forward, there's urban planning and development involved. There's community and safety and public safety involved through the planning process. Having community engagement and events, doing just what you're doing now is making sure we keep up to date. The community would like to have that constant connection, that being involved. Park maintenance and amenities, making sure they're up to par, and having sports and recreation facilities appropriate for the community. Workshop 2, we asked again, common questions here, what is one amenity or recreation facility you'd like to see, and what is one program you would like to see? Again, some of those common threads, playground improvements, swimming pool, pickleball courts, hiking trails, dog park programs, aquatic programs, pickleball classes, youth and family programs. You can see the common threads going through each one of these. On workshop number 3, we shared everything back with the community, everything we had heard, all the information I just shared with you, and we asked them to rank the top 5 classes and the top 5 programs and features. And here you can see some of those results. Again, this helps us start to identify and prioritize elements as we now start to complete everything and look for those common threads of sports programs, partnerships with schools, community events, swimming classes, teen activities, restroom maintenance, more sports fields, cleanliness of parks and facilities, modernizing and upgrading the facilities. We see those common threads come through all of the data now. In addition to all of that, the website for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan was viewed almost 2,000 times, had constant check-in with the community. It was both original visitors and return visitors, which we like to see because some people are checking in. We had 39 feedback comments on the project website. Some of those feedback comments are listed here that we had heard. We didn't ask a question specifically. Those are open-ended comments, but when we go through and we read through all of them, we can glean the program and park facility needs that people may have mentioned. Again, very similar elements here: community engagement and visibility, outdoor fitness, youth sports, sports fields, baseball fields, bike paths, and landscape improvements, playground improvements, restroom maintenance, a lot of repetitive elements in here coming again through the community needs. What we do to combine all that information as we go through and we start to look at the needs analysis, we look at how many times did we hear it, where did we hear it through all the geographic systems, mapping results as they come in, and how often and when did we hear it. So if we heard it in a small group, stakeholder interviews, that was one mode. If we heard it in the statistically valid surveys, the multimodal community survey, that was another mode. If we heard it in the qualitative analysis, the community at large public surveys, which is the workshop 1, 2, 3, or the feedback comments, that was in another mode. If we heard it in all 3 of those modes, it came across in every tool we utilize to go out to the community. It's considered a frequent element that comes up at the top of the list because it came up so repetitively. If it came up on 2 of them, we identify it as an apparent element. If it only came up in 1, it was an identified element. So you can see we're already starting to program in now the prioritization based on how many times we hear it, where we hear it, and how often we hear it as we go through the process. Those items that we have now listed based on their frequency and hierarchy are community engagement, marketing of programs offered, pickleball classes, league classes, swimming classes, community events, fitness and exercise classes, senior activities and classes, teen and youth programs were the highest prioritization elements based on the program needs. Everything is, of course, listed there on the left-hand side. Everything from the music classes, performing arts, theater arts, sports programs, tennis classes, volunteer programs, dance classes, everything's still in there as well because all needs are important from the community, but we help identify the prioritization items that come up the most so we can see where, if we're going to start to spend money, we can get the most bang for our buck. How can we capture the most community members through this process? or facilitate meeting the need for most of the community members. Same thing with the facilities, from the qualitative to the quantitative, small groups, statistically valid surveys, and the community at large workshops, the public surveys. We see the frequent elements that came up in all three were add more sports fields, bike trails, improve cleanliness of the parks and trails, modernize and upgrade all park facilities, the pickleball courts, park maintenance, restroom maintenance, swimming pool, hiking paths and trails, a parent or dog park, improve safety, playground improvements, and splash pad and water park were some of the highest priorities and elements as part of the needs analysis. Of course, everything is listed there on the left-hand side. And the way we look at this and the way you utilize this chart is if you have funding, if you have money or resources to pick a project up, it might not be the highest rated one. It might be something lower on the list. You might be able to pair it with another item that's on this list as well too. So that way, by combining elements within certain funding mechanisms, you can start to actually collect more and do more for the community based on having everything listed on this list. That way it shows all of the opportunities for you to continue to grow with the community. Now that's just taking into account what we've heard. So now we're going to go into more of that needs analysis and our review of the actual elements that we've seen, such as the gap analysis. We went through and we identified all the parkland acres. We see that 67% of the residents live within a 15-minute walk to the city. But we do so much more than that too. Here's some of them, just some of the mapping analysis that's done in the report. As we look at the neighborhood park radius, this is just a mathematical calculation of how many people live within a 5, 10, 15-minute walk. The mapping analysis that we do as part of the outreach, the middle map there, that was all the restroom desires for restroom improvements across the community. Coincidentally, a lot of the CIP restroom improvements that are in the recommendations here as well are in those areas. So that shows the dynamic as you're listening, your staff is listening to the community, you're hearing it and you're reacting to it. And now we have a document that says, okay, we're doing this, we're going forward. We have restroom improvements itemized in those exact communities, and they're being presented forward in the CIP. And lastly, here on the right-hand side, the average distance traveled to parks. This is a really important one because we used anonymized cellular data to look at where people are coming from to go to your parks. That is where people are coming from. Twice the size of the city. You are a regional influence. So when we look at the mathematical planning analysis on the far left-hand side of a 5, 10, 15-minute walk, I also look at the vehicular traffic of where people are coming from. They're driving from outside the community into your community to visit your parks because they obviously like them. People do not see borders on the roads. They see where their kids want to go. I want to go to Ladybug Park. They have their own names for them, so they drive to the recreation facilities they want to recreate in. And that's what we track as well as we go through this process. That brings us to some of those key strategies and recommendations that we've developed to help you continue to support the community and develop parks and recreation facilities here within the city. I'm going to read through each one of these. They're tied in with specific goals, so you have, like I had mentioned, immediate recommendations that can be taken right away.
Would it be possible for me to ask just a quick question? The public workshops were held the beginning, early 2023?
Early 2024, from
20.
January to, I want to say June.
Okay.
The public workshops were held.
Okay. I was trying to coincide that with the permanent closure of the pool and thinking that that may have
The pool was
influenced
closed.
some of those decisions, making the pool even a higher priority than it already seems to be.
Yeah, so the pool was closed during that time, because we did hear that from the community, elements about the pool. But it does go in that list with everything else as well, so you can see kind of where it falls in there too. There are also other higher, I don't like to say high and low priorities. There are other priorities as well that are ranked high. And one of the things as we do the workshops, I do all of them. So I can hear and see everybody. I like to meet with all the stakeholders. So that way, as something comes up, if I start to see something potentially being hijacked where there's an organized group just trying to get something in, I can look at that and make sure I balance it. I listen to everybody. But as we go through this report, and we make sure that everything's done with a human analysis, not just a computer robotic, this is how many times it came in, but a realistic review of it. I appreciate that. That's a really good question. Nonetheless, so key strategies I'd like to share just briefly as we go through them here. Key strategy 1 was developed to prioritize multi-use facility development to meet the needs of the diverse recreational demands here within the community. Elements such as add more sports fields. We do detail what sports fields specifically and how to approach that within the report through our analysis, but each one of those recommendations comes in with that, what your existing conditions are, what the community had said, and what our recommendation is going forward. Some of those sports facilities, those recommendations include continuing the development of the Los Alamos Hills Sports Park expansion, making an emphasis on multi-use facilities and overlays, being versatile. We can't be tied to one footprint. We need to make sure all facilities as we go forward have the ability to change over time. And what that means is, I'll use a tennis court, for example, can also be multiple pickleball courts, making sure the size of that slab has the ability to become multiple things, even a basketball court down the road, making sure we have the size, and whether that means going 2 or 3 feet extra, doing that as part of our planning process that works for baseball fields, soccer fields, football, everything as we go forward. Dog parks, having a dog park, continuing the development of the Glen Arbor Dog Park, already meeting that, going forward to address that with the community. Pickleball courts and classes. We have those recommendations in here as well, but when we do those, making sure that we have the ability to do them in groupings of 4 or 8 is our recommendation, because then you can host a round robin tournament. You can have programs around it. That might sound like a lot, but it's 2 tennis courts. Those courts, pickleball courts, are much smaller than the large tennis courts. Here's just some representative images of them. And then, of course, that multi-use field there on the bottom right-hand side, having open areas for people to program multiple different sports. Key strategy 2, implement a comprehensive maintenance and upgrade plan to continue Murrieta's high standard of quality and user satisfaction. Those elements include improving the cleanliness of parks, improving safety, planning crime prevention through environmental design in all your designs as you go forward, making sure that SEPTED is part of the design process, and modernize and upgrade all parks and facilities. That goes in hand with what we talk about in the report of having Public Works and Parks and Recreation Community Services tied together. As we improve some of these facilities, as we have more programs, it's going to take that balance of Public Works in terms of maintenance as well as we go forward. So that's also identified in here. Playground improvements. This is an important element, and we did map all of those comments as well as the restroom maintenance improvements. And a lot of those are tied into current CIP projects as we go forward. We've identified those, and those are all documented in the report. Key strategy 3 is create an integrated trail network that promotes active transportation and enhances outdoor recreation opportunities as recommended in the Trails Master Plan. I'm going to leave this whole speech for the next presentation because we have a whole document on that one as we come up. And there's some representative images as well there. Those are key because they do represent what the community is looking for. And it actually looks a lot like what you have here, which is a very beautiful trail network. Key strategy 4, design an aquatic facility and that caters to a diverse group of skill levels that promotes water safety. Elements that we heard from the community and desires are a splash pad, water parks, and our recommendations are entering into that with small spray play equipment. Not a big thematic structure, but entering in where people can cool off. There's little misters, those types of elements that can be easily maintained. Swimming pool, and then expand aquatic programming and swim lessons and aqua fitness elements. A lot of senior potential programming's in there as well too. Having aqua fitness, we have some representative images here as well. Key strategy 5, develop an outreach campaign that leverages local partnerships with personalized communication to promote a diverse range of community and programming events. This goes back to some of the information we saw as where people get their information from you. 44% get their information from a website. That means search engine optimization, making sure you're tying into that. Another 27% got their information from Google, 12% got it from social media. I never discount the A-frames of old. We actually had participants from a workshop come in because they saw an A-frame that Leah and staff put out in front of the community center up in Alderwood. They said, oh, I saw the poster, I came in. Never discount those. But looking at the information that we've detailed in the appendices and in the report to make sure that we do have that community engagement strategy in place on the community events, making sure that we promote the fitness and exercise classes, the senior activity classes, and the youth programs that we have to make sure everybody's aware of them. So as we start to build that awareness and network, if we do see that need remain, we can continue to grow them. But starting with that communication strategy, making sure everybody's aware of what you have today so you can go forward into the future. I won't go into all the details on these elements, detailed in the appendices, as we also did do a lot of maintenance recommendations, looking at all the fields, looking at the lighting, looking at the irrigation systems, the courts, and then we also provided recommendations of putting things into the CMS, such as the Computerized Maintenance Management Software Program for landscape elements. You are currently utilizing a CMS program, but we have recommendations for incorporating landscape elements into that as well too, to begin to program those things and those repairs and maintenance and life cycle elements. Lastly, the funding and implementation strategies. The days of large funding are gone. Now, if they may come back, but currently they don't exist. What we do recommend as we go forward is looking at some of those more specific elements, such as the Baseball Tomorrow Fund, Tennis Association funds, the Trails, Greenway, and Bicycle Transportation Fund, as well as Swimming Foundation grants. Working with some local communities, we found even in Orange County, Providence was a big donor to a lot of sports facilities because that was healthcare tied into a lot of their promotional elements. Looking for some of those smaller 5,000, 10,000, tying multiple grants in together to start to begin to build some of those programming or implementing some of those park improvements that the community is looking for. Though it's going to be the challenge, is looking at some of those smaller grants, grouping them together, and then launching them. In terms of the brass tacks, here we are with 12.6 million funded park, recreation facility, and trail improvement projects. That's in the CIP right now. Those are the funded ones. There are also another 12.8 million unfunded projects identified in there, and the master plan has an additional 39.9 million recommended projects. Now, that's everything from the short term, the midterm, and the long term. Everything's in there. So that way, it works for us today as an actionable plan, but it can help us plan and balance the checkbook for the next 3 to 5 years, and then 5 to 15 years down the road, much further, how we can implement some of these larger vision elements as well too. With that, I hope I didn't take too much of time on that. I will answer any questions you guys may have. That was a bit of a whirlwind tour for what was a year-long process, more than a year-long process, but it was a pleasure meeting with the community, as well as many of you seeing you around at some of the workshops and stakeholder interviews. So with that, thank you very much.
I note that you had 14 meetings with stakeholders. Who are these stakeholders?
Stakeholders included representatives from our Parks and Recreation Commission on the ad hoc committee, all 5 council members, the Murrieta Valley Historical Society, the 2 local bike riding organizations, the school district, and an equestrian group, and the local downtown association.
Okay. But there wasn't any of the sports leagues?
That complete, I apologize.
Okay. No, I was just saying that the Murrieta National Little League or soccer teams or those type of people, leaders of those organizations, were not included with the stakeholders?
They had a completely different survey unto themselves.
Okay. All right.
That was incorporated here?
I apologize?
That was incorporated?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, the entire analysis was incorporated into it. The stakeholders were separate from the sports organization because they did have their own special outreach process and included a sports analysis per team and per organization for them. So they actually were included in another process for that community outreach.
So I did notice, as I was looking through the 468 pages, one of the things that I've been in Parks and Rec, oh God, Brian, 30 years now? Oh my God, I feel old. But, you know, with that, when new cities come online, they get all excited about building all this stuff. They forget about the life cycle, and then things start to fall apart, and they go, oh no, now what, you know? Mm-hmm. And then it costs twice as much to go back and rebuild. So I am glad to see that, you know, Murrieta has tried to stay on top of that and address it. And do you see that keeping pace with sort of budgetary constraints? Or, you know, I know it's going to be interesting, but I still believe, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. When I started in Parks and Rec, our budget was nothing. And so you learn to get creative. So I think there's always going to be space, but nobody wants to pay for maintenance. I mean, that's no fun, right? They want parades and, you know, all the high visibility things, but yet they'll complain when the restrooms aren't clean or modern. So it's a dichotomy that, you know, Parks and Rec professionals deal with. But just what is your opinion of moving forward? Does it look like, you know, we're going to be able to sustain the maintenance piece of it, or keep the life cycle up?
So I'll give you a two-part answer to that. One, yes, I believe you have been. Everybody likes to build everything and have it all available for everybody all the time. When we go through, I'll just use the sports organization analysis as an example. A lot of the sports needs are actually met by the partnership with the schools. So that's good. You don't want to have to be hosting everything. You want to have a balance, so that way you can, as sports change, as we all know, you know, here today, gone tomorrow sometimes, and new sports will arise as well. So you want to be versatile and have multi-use fields to adjust that programming as need. You do have a balance of that. You do have some deficits, but that's where that relationship comes in with some of the school districts. So you are balancing it very well. You're not building everything all the time everywhere. You don't want to do that, because then you're right, you do have too much maintenance, but you are becoming a destination because you're a growing community and people like the level of service out here. So now they're coming from outside in. You saw that with the distribution of where people are coming from map. So you do now have to kind of balance that as well too. And as you have programs, as you have some of those community facilities with the large sporting events, of course those restrooms will need a little bit more maintenance. So that's where we have to balance that public works side of things with the maintenance in the restrooms. In terms of programming life cycle elements, you are doing that. You have a lot of playground elements coming up as well too, and we see those in the CIP. They're planned for and thought of, and those, a lot of those are in some of that CMMS systems life cycle management analysis. But we also, as we went through this, we'd like to see some of the landscaping components, and those are detailed in here, kind of put into that system to expand the planning of it, of what is working, what isn't working, being attentive to turf rotation, being attentive to what I like to call active turf, sports turf, versus passive turf, where we have those, because that's expensive. It has to be watered and maintained and mowed regularly. So looking at all that information as we go forward, yes, I do believe you're doing well. As you go forward into the future, it's always about maintaining, seeing if we can continue to capture some of these funds from other grant sources, seeing that we can go forward into the future and make sure we continue that balance. I don't have a crystal ball, but you're definitely on your way by having previous Park and Recreation Master Plan, following it, setting the tone again, and continuing forward. I think you're very much on your way.
And one thing I may have missed, and you can clarify for me if it's in the actual report, is, you know, none of us would have guessed 15 years ago that pickleball would be such a rage, right? None of us, and we've all been in this world a long time, but is there a component within the master plan that potentially looks at what could be coming? Do you know? I mean, I know it's, again, there's no crystal ball,
Yeah,
but, you know, there's trends, there's, we can look at the age demographics of the community, which of course, you know, we're all getting older. And so just looking along those lines, I did see the demographic piece, but I was just wondering if, you know, more of the programmatic side, is there a way to sort of, you know, maybe guess?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
And that is actually part of the report. It's in here as well, too. It's under the participation section where we did the multimodal phone survey. We asked people how often they play, how regular they play. So I can use that from a statistically valid standpoint and tie it into the community and get a benchmark. But then I tie that element for today. Your current need is at around 6.4 courts. You don't build 0.4 of a court. That's just the way the math works out. But I put everything in there. And then we can tie that into the demographics of where you're projected to go in terms of population size. I apply that same statistical number then to it. And if the trend continues, it would continue on, and there would be an element where it does, you need a couple extra courts. That's why we said we had recommended from 4 to do sets of 4 or 8. Now that, again, seems like a lot of courts, but it's not when you look at the space. However, when I see, because we do this all over Southern California, when I look at pickleball, there was a huge vertical climb. It has plateaued. It's not going away, but we do look at the trends. We do look at everything in the industry. More younger kids are playing it now too. They're picking it up. So it's not just a sport for us. Now we have to share courts with some of the youth and my kids. So we do see it plateauing, but I don't see a decline in it at all. And with the popularity of it and the size of it, we could see a continuing kind of plateau of it. If anything, it will continue the way tennis has, which has always been static. If anything, it goes up a little bit every now and then. So we do have that in the report here. I don't see it going away.
In addition, staff is keeping their eye on, for example, the senior center. As our population ages and longer lifespans happen, which is a good thing, the attendance at our senior center, for example, participants are welcome to the center at age 50 years old. There have been comments made by scientists that there's a person alive today that will live to 150 years old. So how do you manage multi-generational preferences in one community center building? So you've got a population from 50 to 70, 70 to 100, 100 to 150. I'm over 50. I like listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I don't think the population at the senior center would want that going through the speakers. So staff is paying attention to those trends as well. In addition, one of the more popular trends that you'll see right now are kids watching other kids play video games. Crona just opened up a facility where it's kind of an auditorium. There's a bank of computers. Kids will go online, play each other on Fortnite or Roblox, and other kids are watching them play games. So we have our eyes on that as well. So.
I was just going to say, I'm almost 70. I like listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
Could I, goals are wonderful things. And like a police department, you want one officer per 1,000. That's kind of like the standard. It's, it's not written in script anywhere, but that's what most departments. In parks, acreage per population seems to be 5 acres per 100,000. If you go back to the Quimby Act, I think it was 30 years ago when a lot of us moved here, and then when they were developing it all. According to the report, we're at 4.22 acres per 1,000 right now. And population in 2023 they had pegged it at 119,000. And population in 2033 is pegged at 132,000. I can tell you by looking up and down the streets of Murrieta, there's going to be a little more than 132,000. But even using those numbers and keeping the 503 acres we have, we're down to 3.81. And I'm a journalist, so we don't do math. If we could do math, we'd do a job where we could make money. Okay. But even I figured that out. And land isn't cheap, and they're not making any more of it. And I'm just wondering if this plan is looking ahead at parkland acquisition. I want to say accusations. No, purchasing more land or developing more parkland to bring us at least closer to that 5 acres per 1,000.
We do not have land acquisition in this document. But I will say, in terms of the math analysis, I always like to say that's the great beginning part of a journey. How you use that land is the most important part, to maximize what you have. And when you have plans like this, it identifies what the community is looking for, and making sure, as through multi-use, through different multiple courts in different areas, you utilize that land as best you can actually reach a higher satisfaction than if you had more acreage than you needed to. That math equation is just the very beginning point of the journey, but you're absolutely right. It will continue to get smaller as you have more residents. And as you go forward, that will be something that you want to look at as well. But I always start with maximizing what you have, and then keeping your eye out for some of those fire sales, should they happen. But you're right, nobody's making any more land. And being smart with the land we have is one of the first steps.
Yes.
Kind of along those same lines, the newer sports park, the phase 2 of that over by, I always forget the name of it because my kids never are too old to have used it. But there is a phase 2, and I've heard talk off and on of this soccer thing coming in, and maybe, to develop that and use that. I don't know how many acres there are, but it's a substantial piece of property. Do we know where, is that figured in here anywhere, or is there, I've heard talk about it for 5 years I've been on the commission, and Go ahead.
Okay.
I think-
Yes, the Phase 2 of Los Alamos Hills Sports Park is about 20 acres. It had an original master plan on that, but the Murrieta Youth Soccer League approached the city with this unique opportunity. And currently, the Murrieta Youth Soccer League and that soccer complex is currently being explored. Still, yes, still currently being explored.
I also noticed, I think, a mention of developed plans for the Phase 2 of the Teen Center, and wondering where that fits into all of this.
So the city is currently collecting developer impact fees, community center development impact fees, and we need to accrue enough to move forward with the construction of that Phase 2. We have a preliminary design. It's a very, very high-level concept, but we're needing upwards of $10 million for Phase 2. I'm not quite sure how much we have in development impact fee funds for community center right now. I can certainly look that up for you. But there's definitely a gap. We need to maximize those revenues and plan on a second phase design that kind of checks a lot of boxes off of our needs. Indoor gymnasium, office space, additional recreation classes space as well.
Okay. And we were chatting earlier before the meeting, of course, a priority of mine anyhow has been the swimming pool. And the swimming pool's in there at $11 million pegged at that, and there's no funding identified for that. And there's not a whole lot of funding identified for much, to be honest with you. And I look at, because I was on the Measure T committee for the first 3 years it was in place. And I think the first year or two, the city was bringing in $16 or $17 million in additional revenue, which was greatly needed. Note that last year it brought in over $30 million. When that was passed, it needed a 50% approval because it wasn't specified toward any particular department. If it had been strictly for public safety, it would have needed a 2/3. But it wasn't. It was kind of sold that way, but it wasn't really that way. It's maybe sacrilege, but the police and fire and public safety gets about 3/4 of that $30 million now, which doesn't leave a whole lot for Parks and Rec. I note in the budget figures, it looks like the Parks and Rec gets about $500,000 a year in Measure T funds out of the $30 million. And I don't think we can go to the taxpayers and ask them to pay more. But if we're going to have to identify where some of this money is going to come from, it's $30 million comes in every year that we weren't getting 6-7 years ago. And public safety is great, and Murrieta is a safe city, and it's one of the great things we have going for it. But there are other priorities too. So I don't know where you come up with $11 million, but and neither do you.
I am not going to argue with you. I agree.
But I look at the $65 million worth of CIP projects over the next 10 years. And like I said, I don't think you can go back to the taxpayers and ask them for any more money, and especially in this current environment. But if we're going to do that, it might involve reprioritizing some of the money that we do have coming in. That's my soapbox. I'm done.
Question. You guys took analysis of people that came into our community to use our parks. Was that just to come to parks, or was it sports related?
So when we did that analysis, what it's called is our unicast anonymous cellular data analysis. So I basically draw a polyline around a park. And then anybody who enters into that park with one of our ankle bracelets, we all carry these things around. They're on our nightstand. They know when we wake up now. That's true. I'm going to be honest, I was very skeptical at it at first. I don't like doing new technology. I don't like being the first one. We actually have done video evidence where we put cameras out on trails and we count the number of people going by. Then we compared those to our new technology, and they do match. So now we do this a lot more nowadays. It's becoming very mainstream. It's not new technology. It's been out for a long time, But we have now incorporated it into park planning, where we look at people who come into that community. It's anonymized, so it doesn't tell me who lives where, but it does tell me how far they come from their homes, and it starts to map that and give me an analysis, so that way I can see how far people are driving from where on a map. And that's what I see. I can't tell you whom they are, but I can tell you just from those charts that we saw, there is a substantial amount of community members, whether they're coming in for soccer games or baseball games or sporting events, or if their kids just really like that skate park and they want to go to that skate park, mom can drive me there. That's where people are coming from. So you are a regional influence. People are coming from outside your community to recreate in your community. And that's just based on those parks themselves, not shopping centers, not people driving through. It's just the parks themselves.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially around Los Alamos, a lot of them are probably going there. We have a great Murrieta Valley Pop Warner. There's not a lot of great Pop Warners in the Valley, so a lot of people come here. We've got the soccer, like you said, baseball. Did you guys track people that leave our community to go to outside communities to go to other parks?
No, we did not track that. That would require the same analysis on all the surrounding communities.
Right, yeah,
we did
okay.
not do that.
So Brian and Leah know where I'm going with this, because I know a lot of us travel outside of the city to go to the skate parks and the pump tracks outside of our city. So I was just curious if you guys track that or not.
Nothing going out, only coming in.
Okay.
This kind of flashed past us. Was a skate park a priority anywhere?
So if I go through, I'm going to refer back to the prioritization facility needs matrix, which is very small in my book here. We did see skate park improvements and expansion listed in the community workshops. We heard it in the community workshops, in 3 different community workshops. We also heard it in the statistically valid multimodal survey. So we did hear it in 2 elements. It's listed as an apparent need, but it was not part of the higher elements that were listed multiple times.
Yeah, a quick question. And this may be a Victor question. With respect to the Teen Center Part 2, has there been any discussion on location? Whether in fact it's going to be an add-on to the existing facility or located elsewhere in the community?
It's currently to be located as an extension of the youth center. So there is a footprint and, like I said, a very high concept drawing of the phase 2 of the youth center. So it'll be an extension of the current facility.
Great, and then part B of that question is, have we ever done the same analysis on the youth center attendees, excuse me, in terms of where they're coming from? And where I'm going with this is, how is the east side represented here?
So when it comes to our Murrieta Youth Center, we have an expert behind us. I can absolutely pull him up here, but I would guarantee that 85% of the students in the youth center come from Chavela Middle School.
Okay, thank you.
Peanut gallery.
So that said, has there been any thought of not putting it on the same footprint, but putting it somewhere else to where it would service that area better?
It wasn't the original design. It was always a phase 1 and a phase 2. The phase 2 portion of the youth center encompasses an indoor gym, various sized recreation classes such as dance, cooking, martial arts, specific needs to those types of recreation classes, and additional offices for staff. So if we were to disengage phase 1 from phase 2 and look for an alternate location for that phase 2, you would basically be duplicating what we have in phase 1. The community room, the homework room, the small kitchen, the lounge area, and things like that. I don't know if we necessarily duplicate that somewhere else when we have additional needs that the community needs to focus on. It's certainly something that we can discuss further, but that was the original intent of separating them out, phase 1 and phase 2.
So this might be a question for Victor, but so in talking to Victor, he thinks ahead quite a bit.
Yes, he does.
So if 85% are coming from the middle school that's across the street from my house, what do you do to either in the next phase or currently with what we're doing to address the fact that that's not really something to go home and brag to mom about, that we're getting it all from one school?
So when we first opened up the youth center, we also looked at the possibility of having a transportation mechanism that we would go to the different schools when they let out and bring that over. The initial research on that found it to be fairly costly, and the youth center at the time, I think it's 13 years old, and it was right about the time we were coming out of the recession, and it wasn't something that we were able to move forward with at that time. And actually, we're still understaffed from when the recession hit in 2008 and 2009. It's definitely something I know that Victor and his staff are currently looking at arrangements with the school district on busing, but it's something that as we get more fully staffed and hopefully funding allocations, we can look at programs like that.
So, based on previous conversations, part of it is right now, they're really, if you look at the head count, there's really not room for a ton of other kids. So if you kind of opened up the pipe to other middle schools, you just don't have the space anyway. So, okay.
Yeah. You're right. I think we hit 305 registrations for the youth center this school year, and we average about 110 to 120 a day, and it's pretty loud with 110 kids in there, and they're pretty active. They're all over the place. There's lines to use the computer lab right now. There's lines to get on the PlayStation and play those games. They're outside playing basketball. So it's with 110 kids in there, it's pretty busy.
You need to clone Victor.
Excuse me?
You need to clone Victor.
Yes.
I will add though, just real quick, that the school district does have after-school programs also alleviating that need at the specific school sites. So that has helped alleviate some of that pressure that the youth center had.
In the middle schools?
At the middle schools, yeah, and also the elementary schools. So we have that to kind of alleviate some of that.
Yeah. It's a ELOP program. It's an after-school program, and the schools are currently have that program going up until 5 o'clock in the evening.
Chris?
So you indicated that, I think if I heard correctly, 350 was the current registration?
About 305.
305, okay. What would we consider capacity?
In terms of total registration?
What can we comfortably hold in the building?
Like, for
At one time at the youth center?
Yeah, I mean, if 305 is the current registration
Registration.
capacity, What's the ceiling?
It's actually not the current capacity. That's how many registrations we have.
I understand.
So the daily activity is around 110. So maximum that you could take at the youth center?
I would say 425, I think. That would probably be the safe number, maximum capacity, like 400.
Every
Yeah, but Victor, the better question is, what's the daily capacity? You know,
I think the most I've seen ever was about 170 kids
70,
at the youth center, and I think that's capacity. So like 170, 175 is max capacity for sure. And safe to say, over the last 11 years, we've had, averaging 300 registrations. We get about half. So I would say that's a safe number.
Mm-hmm.
Half of the registrations show up at different capacities throughout the day.
Yeah.
The week, I mean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can't help but notice the tremendous amount of growth out in the French Valley area in Murrieta. I know the city's putting in a fire station out there. What are we looking at in terms of Parks and Rec in that area there and on the west side, if the west side ever develops? And is there any type of recreation or passive area in the Golden Triangle? Any open space there planned that you can throw some park benches in? And
So on the French Valley side, so
Right.
if you're looking at Winchester being the dividing line,
Right.
anything, and if you're running north and south on Winchester, the east side, that's not Murrieta.
that's Temecula or sphere of influence. for Temecula.
Unincorporated.
Yeah, unincorporated.
So we're on the west side
Right.
of Winchester, and that takes you out mostly to North Star Ranch.
Right.
We just redid those 3 tot lots.
Right.
I would need to probably, on that question, defer a little bit more to our planner, our city
Okay.
planner, and let you know what kind of development is coming down the pipe on that side and what recreation elements might be coming in on the development side. And here's Carl right here. He's
you,
going to
Carl.
help answer that
Good
question.
evening, Commission. Carl Steele, City Planner. So development projects, so first out there along Winchester. So the latest one is the Willow Springs, Adobe Springs project. They have their own private park in there. We don't have a whole lot else out there at this point planned. Most of that area there's a commercial development that we call Murrieta Marketplace, where the new Clinton Keith comes in. There's planned to be like a big box store there, drive-throughs, things like that. There's not gonna be any parkland there. And then it quickly transitions to rural residential zoning out there, the old county zoning, as you go along Clinton Keith and head over towards Whitewood, and there's no planned parks up there. That's pretty much it for that area, I think. I don't know if there's I can't think of other things that we're planning out there. So there's not a whole lot of people from our end. As Leah said, it's most of the planned development that's occurring up there is in the unincorporated area. So it's up to the county to plan for those residents.
So would that be Valleywide or somebody doing that up there?
Yes,
Yeah,
that would be
okay.
Valleywide Recreation who would
Okay.
handle that, the recreation and programming activities out in that area.
Okay. And I guess the other thing was the Hills project up here, or the west side that's been on the books for,
Oh, the vineyard.
the Vineyard project, yeah.
Yeah, so the vineyard specific plan, right, has been on the books for a really long time. Same owner for about 25 years now. They're still processing that. We do have a planned park site in there. It's in the approved specific plan. I believe it's 15 acres, I think, right now,
believe
something
you're
like that.
correct, yes.
And it shares a school site, so it gets a little complicated as to whether or not the school district's going to take the school site or not. They're not going to decide until we get closer to that project ever being built. So we might get a larger park site if the school doesn't get built, or a slightly smaller park site if the school takes sort of some of what's planned there. But there's a decent sized park planned up in there. And we've had good discussions between Planning and Development Services and Community Services about what we'd like to see there, and we will get a park up there if that project is built. Right now, the plan they're working on is about 800 some homes up there. And the school district has said if they build a project that big, they probably will want a school site up there. So we'll see a school and a park.
It may have been a silly question on the Golden Triangle, but open space, like I said, they're not making any more land. And I haven't, in spite of all the hoopla about a year ago, I haven't seen any dirt turned over there yet.
I hear it's going to be an Old West theme.
With the minor league hockey arena? Okay. Yeah.
We keep working with them. They have plans for a few different things that are interesting there. There's plan for a potential recreation type business where you hit golf balls into the air. But there's not a planned actual park site up there.
Okay. Yeah, Ziv Buffman has passed away. That's all I have. Thanks. Yeah.
If I could, thank you. I've asked this question before, and my old age, I've forgotten what your answer was, Leah. But how do I know rooftops contribute to number of rooftops contribute to what a developer has to commit to in terms of open space. How does that apply to apartments?
I'm going to let Carl take that question as well.
Well, so we don't really have a hard and fast number there. It's really about collecting development impact fees, which you're aware of, and then we collect those fees in part to pay for future park facilities, right? And so we have planned future parks, we have planned expansions, which you're discussing. The theory is like as projects are built, development impact fees is sort of like the new projects paying their way, and then we use those funds to build new facilities. But there's not a hard and fast number like, hey, if somebody builds 100 units, then we need this much more park space. We don't have anything like that. But it's really about collecting the fees to help pay for it, and then planning ahead. We have a general plan, which these plans will be incorporated into. And we plan ahead we have a parks and recreation element, and we plan for parks so that we will expand and meet the future residents' needs way down the line.
If I can add one more thing, I think Commissioner Colby, you were talking about the main revenue for recreation, Community Services District. So the main revenue for the Community Services District is from a measure called Measure WW, and that is a rooftop tax. And there's a certain formula that equates multifamily homes into a certain dollar. So each rooftop is $45 that we receive, and that was passed in 1997 by the Murrieta voters. It does not have an inflator on it, so it's the same rooftop amount since 1997. And that is the main revenue source for the Community Services Department. Now, of that $45, approximately 2/3 goes to maintenance and 1/3 goes to recreation. Now, when I say towards maintenance and recreation, this is general. So this is a general benefit to the entire community. So 2/3 of those funds goes to the maintenance of general parks, facilities, roadways, streetscapes, landscapes, and 1/3 goes to those recreation amenities and features that benefit the entire community. So it wouldn't be a recreation program that only benefits, let's say, the Alderwood community. It has to be a program or an event that benefits the entire community. And that's our main source of funding for parks and recreation.
So, think of the question I've got here. How is the 2/3 to 1/3 determined? Was it by the original, original bill or whatever? Okay, and then, so $45 per rooftop, and I've just built an apartment complex with 600 units. How does that equate there?
So there's a formula, and I don't have it handy, but it's in the engineer's report that we go to council every year on. So I'm happy to dig out that engineer's report and send that to you. But that's how vacant land, multifamily, rooftop, single-family home development. There's all different levels. I'm happy to go get that information from
Yeah.
our.
I think the thing, and I think we've gone here before, and out of all respect, I've never gotten an answer that made any sense. So again, I'd like to know, because we've got what it feels like umpteen jillion apartments coming, how that breaks down. Is it the same in each complex? I mean, it's got, if there is mathematics involved, is it $20 a unit? Is it $45 a unit? I'd like to know, because, I mean, you know, these things, a lot of our citizens, I might be one of them, feel like, you know, we're fixing to get overrun with these units, and are they paying their fair share?
So once again, it's, you know, improved public, or improved vacant land, unimproved vacant land, multifamily, single family. There's our levy engineer takes all of that information from the county's database, puts it into a formula, and out comes a revenue number. And I'm happy to, like I said, research that with our consultant. Okay. Okay.
I also think, Leah, you know, I've always heard there's a formula in my former city too. You know, we knew how much we were getting per household and stuff. But I wonder, and Zach may answer this, I don't know, if it was ever addressed. I don't know that the community knows that they only pay $45 a year toward, because nobody really reads their tax bill, right? They just pay it, goes in there, you know what I mean? Nobody's reading it, the detail. But I wonder if people knew, they'd be like, oh my gosh, you know, how can we help more? Because that's so unreasonably low if you think about their requests, right? And we're trying to match what the needs of the community is. Well, somebody's got to pay for it. And a lot of people, when they move to a community, I know when I moved, you know, to Red Hawk, I knew it was a brand new community and I was going to pay higher because I wanted new stuff. So I don't know. I'm probably going down a rabbit hole, but I'm just saying, I'm wondering if that's even a topic that, I don't know the community is aware of what they really pay towards everything that, frankly, your very small staff pulls off in a year is amazing to me, you know? So I just don't know, just throwing it out there. Maybe it's time for a raise.
Let me join you in the rabbit hole. I was co-chair of the Measure WW thing back in 97, 99, and it was pulling teeth to get $45 passed. Now you got to remember that recession had hit and all the other type of things, and school bonds were being defeated left and right in Murrieta, and to get anything passed, we called it whack those weeds, because it was mostly for maintenance, because the theory was, or the reality was, if that didn't pass, all the common areas, you know, there wouldn't be any money to pay to mow or trim the trees or anything. So that's just, I'm joining you in the rabbit hole, but that's where the $45 came from.
Well, I'm happy to join you as well in that rabbit hole. The initial measure, the first measure was Measure CC, and that did fail. The first one out there was for around $60, and the community did not vote to approve that.
Wasn't that the utility tax?
I was a lowly park aide at that time.
Okay. But anyhow, I did fail in getting, like you said.
I don't remember. I remember the first one, Measure CC, that one failed. It was around $60 per rooftop. And then what happened was the idea came back to City Council. City Council said, we will fund the Community Services District to the tune of $440,000 every year, drop that number down from $60 to $45, and then it passed. So we did have 2 attempts at it.
If I may, Vice Chair, in terms of a programming element, I can relate to what you were saying earlier too, is I don't know if people know, and I find that a lot when we do programming for communities, inevitably we hear we want X program. And then the city says, we offer X program. It's not enough just to do it, you have to celebrate it and almost kind of reaffirm, reshare with the community. Look what we're doing, look what it's costing, look what it, so it goes back almost even to that communication dialogue structure of sometimes it's worth just saying, hey guys, this is what it covers.
Now we will move on to the Trails Master Plan, correct?
Yes.
Is that okay with everyone? Okay.
Thank you very much for the information on that. That was very helpful.
Little history.
Little history. Little history never hurt anybody.
So the next one that there we go. The next one that I'm pleased to present is the Trails Master Plan. We did this in conjunction with Fair and Piers, our trail planners, and an additional company who actually went out, walked several of these trails, and everything was, again, entered into our GIS systems. And so as we went through, we could record, again, community outreach and how we need to go forward with the trails. You saw that it was part of the recommendations in the Park and Recreation Master Plan. It came up several times in there. I'll refer back to that. But we did this one as a separate process as well, too. So both documents were done concurrently together. That way, and again, I did the workshop outreach on both of them, I could kind of sort of filter as stuff came in. Trails in the Park and Recreation Master Plan didn't just get isolated over there. I made sure that it was referenced back on the Trails Plan and vice versa as well, too. A lot of times community members see workshop, they want to go to a workshop. Oh, I thought this was a Trails workshop. No, I want the Parks workshop. I was able to make sure we facilitated both concurrently as we went through it, so that way all the data spread across both documents in their entirety. So the Trails Master Plan is, again, same thing, a guide and implementation tool and management for the development of trail programming, again, based on the local community needs of your community. We followed the same process of going through the stages, looking at the inventory of the existing conditions. We did count people on trails to see how many people were using trails and when. So that way we knew what trails were being heavily utilized, what were not. We looked at the extensive community engagement, went through the same process as well there, balanced the needs, looked at the recommendations, and presented the report tonight, which you see before you. Timeline was the same as well. We started at the end of 2023, then from January through June, we collected community outreach. We had a separate dedicated project website for this plan as well, and that still is online tonight, and so is the feedback button for the plan as well too. So as we went through this, we had two separate project websites to make sure everything was available for people on both elements, whether they wanted to do trails or parks and recreation, but by facilitating it ourselves, we were able to make sure nothing got left off in one or the other, that they worked together in tandem as they went through. We also went through, we did the demographics once, it applies to both. So that way there was some economy of scale in here. We didn't have to redo everything for a separate plan. We just made sure that they were taken into consideration as we went through both of them. As we go through, we found 19 trails through the trail inventory. We looked at the trail connectivity specifically, and we looked at the conditions. And as I mentioned before earlier, the usage rates, how often people are utilizing some of the trails, both from the cameras as people came in, but as well as self-reporting from people. We asked them, how many times do you use trails? When we looked at that trail inventory here, you can see the trails spread across the community in several different areas. And again, when we start to look at these, yes, this is a high-level map, but as we go through, we started to collect data and look at information on macro level and smaller areas within the community. The outreach included stakeholder interviews, statistically valid multimodal survey elements, as well as 3 community workshops and that project website, as I had mentioned. Again, another economy of scale is by doing those together, we were able to make sure that we paired questions on the multimodal survey specifically for trails and specifically for the Park and Recreation Master Plan, so there wasn't a duplication of efforts. We were able to maximize utilizing one survey for both projects, making sure we got the correct data questions in as we went along. Now, yes, it made the survey a little bit longer, but we were able to only have to do it once and be able to utilize it for both projects, which was a very resourceful element on the city's part to do them in tandem together. As part of this process, we had over 4,600 touch points you can see here through the website views, the feedback submittals, the surveys, as well as the workshops. You can see we had a few more people interested on this one, sharing information on those website views and the feedback information. And I'd like to share some of that information with you as we go forward. A lot of the trail needs that we heard from the community included advertisement. For the stakeholder interviews included advertisement, marketing the trails to the community, looking at connected trails, looking at safe trails, signage, trail amenities, trail maintenance, long-term maintenance, keeping them clean, updated trails maps with amenities and parking elements. And I'm going to talk about the maps quite a few as we go through this, especially when we get to the recommendations, because we've developed quite a bit as part of this project here. When we look at the distribution again, where the data was coming in from the community, we wanted to make sure we had a clean distribution across the community. And again, you see from the multimodal to workshop 1, 2, 3, and even feedback, we had people from all across the community for all of the outreach efforts. When looking at the statistically valid multimodal portion questions for the trails, we see, again, we talked about the 44%, but when we talk about specific trail satisfaction, we see that coming up to 60% of participants said they were satisfied with the trails in Murrieta. 52% mentioned that participants mentioned that they go hiking and walking as part of their main activity and their reason for utilizing trails. Diving into some more of those statistically valid survey questions, we asked what is one trail or trail amenity you would like to see added or improved within the city? And listed in alpha order here, you can see maps, signage, markers. Again, following along some of those elements that we heard from the stakeholder comments earlier, as well going to be replicated throughout this. Improved trail network, improved trail safety, connectivity, provide dog waste stations and more trash cans, provide more bike trails, provide more hiking trails and walking trails, provide more trail information. This is all information in terms and verbiage that came from the community. We don't wordsmith things as we go along. If they say it, we record it and we put it in here. When we had workshop 1, we asked if how they're using the trails within Murrieta. And we see the majority of participants on the trails were walking and hiking, following biking, and then running and dog walking. And then other uses are as well recorded in the appendices. When we talked about how satisfied are they with the maintenance of the overall condition of the trails, we went through and we heard people that were satisfied had some suggested improvements for us. We recorded them and identified them later. Some that were dissatisfied with the maintenance quality, some had no opinion on it. And then some that said they were satisfied, but they needed more trails in the community, not just the trail that they were walking on. And we also heard from some people who said they were satisfied, but they had very specific trail mentions that they wanted on the trail they hiked. So parsing all of that information out, where people wanted trail improvements, on what trail, we started to collect. And again, we went through that same data analysis, but on a trail specific element. We asked if there were any barriers or challenges that prevented people from using trails more often. And some of the things that we had heard was the trail conditions, the maintenance, accessibility and knowledge of the trails, connectivity and length of the trails, and lack of desired features from their standpoint, as well as their view of safety and security on the trails. We also asked how the city can improve in providing trails to the community residents. And what we heard from the community was expansion, design of amenities on the trails. Again, going back to urban planning and making sure that they're included in the development, conservation, and preservation, as well as having regulations for those as we continue development of trail networks here in the city. Community engagement, promotion, technology, feedback, awareness, and collection. Again, that ties back into some of the things we heard in the Park and Recreation Master Plan where people wanted to know where they were. In fact, what we found when we went through this process is a lot of people had their own names for the trail where they went. And it wasn't the official name on the map, but they had just kind of dubbed it their own name. So making sure that we have that awareness, that dialogue, that information sharing was something critical to the community. Information provisions and accessibility, trail maintenance, and environmental protection were also mentioned of how the city can help improve providing trails to the community. In workshop 2, we started to explore some other information, such as what is the name of the trail you most often use or visit. California Oaks Trail was by far one of the largest trails that people utilize most often. Coal Canyon Trail, followed by Las Brisas Trail. We also asked the questions, what do you like about those trails? Why are you using those trails the most often? By starting to gather this information, I can identify why they might not be using another trail and apply this information then to it. And what we heard was aesthetic appreciation, the natural beauty, the views of some of those trails, the accessibility, close to home and ease of access, recreational value, walking, hiking, running on them, the safety and cleanliness of those trails and those secure surroundings that they were well maintained. And the wildlife and nature, again, that ties back into the natural beauty as well, but as we record people's information, we record it in their own words here. So they may seem similar, but it's their words, so we keep them separate as we go through here. We also, what facilities or amenities they find most valuable on the city's trail existing system. We also asked what facilities or amenities you believe are missing or lacking and could be improved. Some of the facilities they find most valuable are the accessibility, basic amenities, including safety features, environmental features, and trail maintenance. Some of the facilities that we heard that they believe are missing or lacking include environmental conservation and maintenance. That ties back into having some of those improved maintenance elements, trail amenities, connectivity, trail information and signage, safety and accessibility were some of the top mentions. In workshop 3, we again shared all the information with them that we had collected throughout the process, and we asked the participants of this workshop to rank some of the information that we had collected, 1 being the most important, all the way down to 9. And these were just some of the top elements that we had heard from the community, such as more hiking, connectivity to existing trails, that environmental protection, bike-friendly trails, trail maintenance, providing trail amenities, safety and accessibility, signage, as well as promoting trails and advertising the trails. And you can see there some of the words that they'd used to describe them within each one of these. We also had, as you can see here, almost 3,000 views on the project website. Again, both returning visitors and new visitors following along the process. We received 21 comments as part of this effort, and some of those feedback comments included requests for improved trail connectivity, incorporating signage and educational aspects of the trails, enhancing the safety of the trails, and building new trails. When we collected all the information of what we'd heard, what we've seen, what the community was looking for, the participation rates, the anonymized, the cellular data as we go through, the video counts of people on the trails, what we come up with then, balancing the needs and the wants, we've developed 7 recommendations for this. Trail connectivity connections, signage and wayfinding, trail classification and design standards. So as we look to improve, implement, or develop new trails, we now have a system of what each trail should look like, what it should have, how it should look and feel. Trail amenities, trail maintenance, traffic calming, improved visibility, as well as mapping and data management. The first one, trail connections and additions, is having those new trail connections. There's our map here, perfect. Some of those new trail connections we've identified specifically in the document, including Warm Springs Trail, Copper Canyon Trail, Sycamore Ranch, Mapleton Trail, identified in the document of potential connections to connect trails together and expand them. This includes even sidewalk connections. When we have those sidewalk connections, looking at those as having traffic calming elements. You'll see that also mentioned again too. That plays into some of those safety concerns that people had within the information that we heard from the community. And then new trail incorporation and future trails. This also starts to tie into the Murrieta Hills, the northern edge of the city, formalizing and adding in some of those trails within the city there. You can see at the top purple element. Now I will note, at least from my eyes, it's very hard to see these maps. It's very hard to read them. And if we were just to print this out and say, here you go, here's your trail map, I would kind of laugh at it because I can't see exactly where those walkway connections are on here. But all of this information is included in GIS, which is the computer system. So as we went through this process, we mapped everything, and that's what we turn over to the city as well too. So they can be zoomed in, they can be utilized within the computer systems of the city and actually dial in and see those elements and aspects here. It is very hard to see on these plans, but the map on the right, we've also identified within our recommendations. You can see where they're keyed to adding trailhead signage, adding crossing signs, adding trail directional signage elements. We've started to key those recommendations in on the document itself in those visual bubble diagrams for each of the trails. The next one, signage and wayfinding, implementing a uniform signage program and wayfinding enhancements. We heard that from the community, and having done several of them, we worked with Fair and Peers and we actually developed signage plans for you to start to identify within the community of what that signage might look like and where you might put them. So now these trail recommendations are going just from you need signage to here's what that signage could look like, here's where you can implement it, here's what they would look like. And there we also included color standards, font standards, and everything within the document so that you're ready to go with some of these. And what we've also added on there, you can see the QR code. Because you have a tech savvy community here, having digital trail maps is much more key, not just trifolds and put them in the kiosk at the front. I'm a Yosemite man. I love those. I always bring them home, and I will continue to pick them up. But having it on your phone is also very important. You have a tech-savvy community. that would go much further, having that available, because then you can update it as well through the maps. It's not having to print 100 copies of them, run them out, put them in the stands, but having it on a QR code so it's updatable through your GIS systems, information that we've provided as part of this project. That way it can be updated immediately. Anything that needs to be maintained or closures can also be updated within that. And that was provided as one of our recommendations, as well as trail classification and design standards for both user classification and trail classification. How wide are the trails? What do the trails look like? What's the easement of them, the vertical clearance, the optimum grade? This comes into play when we start to look at U.S. Forest Service standards. We also researched Riverside County trail standards, as well as municipality standards that we've done locally in the area from trail plans, incorporated those all in here. So you can see you now have a type 1 nature trails, type 2 recreational trails, type 3 wide dirt or utility roadbed trails, type 4 greenbelt concrete path trails, type 5 paved multi-use trails, and asphalt or concrete. Now, I love my charts. This is a very charty chart. In the document, we actually provided images. So you can see these, what it looks like, what it feels like. One of the things that we do when we do our trails is we want to make sure that we capture that look and feel. As you heard from the community as we went through it, people go to some of the trails the most because of the nature, because of the surrounding views, because of that connection to the environment outside of our homes and our business complexes. So that's all represented in here, but I do go through this so that way you have guidelines. As you start to develop more trails and connect them, you can identify what type of trail it is, how wide it should be, what the clearance is, what the grade is. So that way, as you go forward too, you can also identify what the user classifications are. Is it equestrian? Is it bike? Is it walking? So that way, all of those classifications are identified within the document for the trails, and we've identified each of those too. Those would also be part of that potential signage element should you go forward with it. Additional recommendations include trail amenities, such as trailheads, staging area amenities, and on-trail amenities. Elements such as signage that we had talked about. As part of the document too, we also identified those trails. You can see some of the images here in a map, and then graphically identified where potential dogway stations would go, picnic benches would go, based on what we've seen, access points, and trail connectivity within the area. So each one of those trails has recommendations on it. You can see in the upper left-hand corner there, the user classification. Here's just specifically for California Oaks Trail. You see we've identified walking, biking, and family-friendly trail. So that way, as you're deciding to go out and walk on a trail, you can now, with the information that we've provided, and then this easily tie them into cell phone mapping, city's website. I want to go to a different trail. Now I can look at where are the family-friendly trails, where is the equestrian trails. So that way I can dial in specifically to where these trail locations are. And that plays back into some of the recommendations of sharing with the community, informing the community of where trails are, what the trail names are. As I mentioned again, that was always an ambiguous element going through some of the outreach. We also talk about, as part of the recommendations, routine maintenance programs and adopt a trail programs. You do have currently right now, the Murrieta Fix It is making sure that we're incorporating those reports into the trail elements as well too. So we continue to track based on that GPS element tied into the trail standards that we've provided and our GIS information. So that way you can continue to surgically update trail maintenance that might be washed out for whatever reason, or might have a fallen branch, or might need some some shrubs cleared throughout it. You can start to, as well, working with the community, continue to provide that trail maintenance on the trail systems themselves. And then some of the last ones here, that traffic calming, I talked about this earlier on too. Whenever we have those enhanced crossings where we're connecting trails, we look at reducing speed measures. We look at this could be as simple as adding crosswalks in some areas, adding traffic calming elements in others where we bring more plant material closer, it calms traffic down. In those key areas, here's an example of one, just making sure that they're available where we are planning crossings. And then last but not least, having data mapping and management of the information of those trails. Now, as I mentioned, all of our stuff goes into GIS. Everything's already been prepared and we've sent that all over to the city, so you're well on your way. This was something that the community had talked about, is having accurate maps. As we went through this, we can see here's one of the maps we've developed there, is having all of that mapped in of how long those trail lengths are, of what are those trail classifications, what's the trail details. It's an easy trail. It has 1.56 miles. The trail width is 8 to 14 feet. The material is decomposed granite, native soil. So if I'm going to take my mother-in-law on a walk, and I'm going to take my little kid on a walk, I know that I'm not going to have to be going over rough terrain. I can look at these maps and start to go, you know what? I can make it from here to there. I might not do a 5-mile hike. I don't think I could make that. My kids would have to push me in the stroller after that. But now with these maps, you're well on your way to actually starting to provide those elements that the community is looking for and meeting them in a comprehensive trail mapping GIS system. We've already started to prepare that and send that over. So now you're well on your way with that information. The implementation, this is where we've tied in, again, recommendations from a kind of money standpoint. When I look at these, the traffic calming and improved visibility connections of those trails, that's where we're going to see some of the money, some of the long-term planning elements there. But some of the short-term stuff that we've identified in here, you can see those maintenance operations, the trail classification system we've provided in the document, ready to be approved by you. The trail user classification developed and provided in the document. The trail mapping and data management, well on your way with that now. Continuing the implementation and utilizing that as you go forward. So we've already started just from the collaborative resources of developing this the way we do, moving on quite a few of these elements. The big ticket items are going to be when you start to implement the signage, actually printing the signs, putting the footings out there and organizing them. That's where you're going to start spending some of the money, but it will have rapid improvements, rapid visibility to the community. Along with the maps, you'll start to have that trail system flourish very quickly. The traffic calming and the trail connections, sidewalk connections are going to be your big ticket items on some of these as you start to weave those trails together then. A little bit faster of a presentation. No, maybe not. I apologize. That was the same one. I just get so excited when I present the information because as we hear it from the community, it is truly a blessing that I am gifted with here to be part of this with your community, to see that you're forward thinking, you're looking at this, you listen to the community, and you've invited us in to prepare this document, and to see the next 5, 10, 15 years of the community here is really exciting. So I apologize if I went over a little long on that, but thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Two things. The Adopt a Trail program, we talked about some last year. Has that been rolled out, or where are we at on that?
Yes, the first phase of that has been rolled out, and I believe we currently have, I'm going to turn four combination of businesses and residents having adopted trails.
Great.
Phase 2 of that will be the kind of a choose your path program where you can adopt the trail and volunteer to improve the trail, or you can sponsor the trail, and at certain sponsor levels, you will be afforded certain recognitions, certain merch, things like that. So we're in draft mode right now. We've gotten comments back from Brian, and so we're going to clean that up, see if we can put a little bit of marketing spin on it, and then kick it on up to the city manager's office as well, get their input, and then it's going to come before you. In our May meeting on May 1st, in the agenda forecast, you'll know when we anticipate the commission reviewing the second phase of the kind of the Adopt a Trail program, and we're going to get your input as well.
Great. Second question. I noticed on the Tuesday City Council meeting on the consent calendar were the recommendations of the names of the parks that we talked about last time. I wasn't glued to my TV watching it. I didn't know how that resulted.
They ratified it. It was on consent calendar. Right. They did not pull it from consent. They had no questions. So we now have Bear Valley Park 2 is officially Engelman Oak Park, and then Mapleton A, B, and C is Floral Loop Trail, Mapleton Loop Trail, and Keller Point Trail.
Very good. We made a difference. Thank you, Leah.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to just maybe make a suggestion. You said earlier that we could combine elements of what the city wanted, like you were saying, putting pickleball courts with the tennis courts. Bike trails, it was number 4, mountain bike trails. It was number 4 in the priority list, I think, people wanting that. I wonder if you've seen before, I know I have, mountain bike trails having like the trail, they have little areas where they have like jumps and other little like teeter-totter type things that mountain bikes can go on, having something just off the trail where we could combine that, where we could have the pump track people happy. It doesn't cost a lot of money because you're not bringing in asphalt and things like that. It's not a big area. But if we could combine trails and something like that to facilitate the mountain bikers.
I am not a biking person. I would need to get some feedback from both of those two groups, the mountain biking group and the pump track group, to see if that is something that they would utilize. It's an excellent idea. I would just need more feedback, particularly from both those groups, to see if that would work.
So several places on, particularly the trails, there was safety. What are they looking for there? Or what's their, real concern?
We heard a number of different elements when it comes to safety, and they're outlined there and some of the details specifically listed in the appendix, but I can just summarize them. We heard elements such as awareness of wildlife in terms of safety, having some wildlife signage as part of your signage of what is there, knowing what to be aware of. That could also tie into some of the digital media too. We also heard in terms of safety is having lights or lit elements at the trailheads. So as you're coming and going into the trails, that there are elements so that way you have the ability to see the trailhead. No lights were asked for on the trails. I want to be clear on that because sometimes that's a sticking point. And then in terms of some of the safety elements too, what we always see, and I hear this quite a bit, is people, when they see trash, when they see lack of maintenance elements, they automatically kick it in as, well, it's a safety element. Well, it's not maintained, it's not taken care of. That's not it. I have to draw the line on that one. It's not a safety element, that's a perception. So I always discount that one too. But when somebody does say safety, I take it in as safety. That's generally what I heard quite a bit as we went through it, more of the wildlife consideration, because some of those trails can be remote. Some of them are out there in nature. There are a few that are long parkway areas that are well maintained, lots of people, but those are the things that I generally heard throughout the process.
Okay. And then through this process, just out of curiosity, do we have a feel for, in a given month or a given week, how many people use our trails?
I have that data. I don't have it in front of me.
Rough?
Is it in the appendix?
I could look
I
that up.
have-
Do you have that?
It's not a big deal, but I was just kind of curious. I mean, do we think it's 500? Do we think it's 200? Do we think it's 1,000?
So if we were to, just some of the ones specifically that we looked at, I'm just going to read out of the report right here. Las Brasas Trail, we had surveyed from Thursday to Sunday, we had 256 users on that trail. And what we did is we did 2 weekdays, 2 weekend days, because we all have different schedules. What we found on that one was 93% of them were pedestrians, and peak day usage time included around 7 p.m., evening hours. Coal Canyon, I'll just read a couple of these excerpts. Coal Canyon Trail at Hayes Avenue, we had from that Thursday to Sunday 532 trail users. 89% of those were pedestrians. The peak times were around 4:45 p.m., evening hours. You'll see a little bit of a trend here too. As we go to the Rancho Los Alamos Trail at Alba Drive, 244 people were using that trail from Thursday to a Sunday. 94% of them were pedestrians. So we captured all this data as we went along.
And those are good numbers. Those are encouraging numbers.
Those are great numbers. And when I look at the Park and Recreation Master Plan of how many people are going outdoors on a monthly basis, again, you're twice as high as most communities. People are recreating, they're hiking in the evenings, they're going out on trails. There was a difference on the Rancho Acacias Trail. A lot of people use that one in the morning, 10:45 a.m. to 11 a.m. That one had some, again, 86% pedestrians, hikers out there. A lot of hiking, a lot of walking, jogging, in this community on these trails, a lot of pedestrians. And we took that all into consideration when we did each one of those maps with the user classification and the trail classifications.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We good? Okay. So at this time, if I'm correct here, we want to entertain a motion and a second to approve the revisions to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan update and recommend adoption to the City Council.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion.
Got to hit a button, I think. It's over my pay grade. There you go. God, we're good. Okay.
And I just seconded it, so I think we're
Okay.
good.
So we need to vote on that?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Secretary, do you do that or do I do that?
You hit the button.
Oh, hit the button. Dadgummit. Okay, we're good.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay.
You
And
know,
then,
By the time we get this wired, they're going to replace it with something
no,
else.
they will, they will. I'm still struggling with lack of paper. Okay, so there we go. Okay. So now, we need a motion and a second to approve the final revisions to the Trails Master Plan update and recommend adoption by the City Council. A motion and a second, please. Get that button, there you go. Okay. And now we need to vote on approving that. There we go.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. With that said, we want to thank all of you for the tremendous hard work you put into this effort and tonight. And we will see you at the next meeting. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Yep.